Hello, everybody.
Hey, and welcome to the CIRS Group Q&A live webinar. All right, well, just so everyone is aware, we are recording this webinar, so we're going to go ahead and stop videos as we see people turn them on. So just know that your camera's off, muted. Make sure you're putting questions in the chat. And should we jump right in, get started?
Yeah, definitely. And I know some people are already saying where they are from, so please feel free to put that in the chat as well, where you're from. We'd like to see where everybody's coming from today. But yeah, let's do it.
All right, so welcome to the CIRS Group Spring 2023 Q&A webinar. We did have some people who submitted questions ahead of the webinar, and then we are also going to take any questions you may have during the webinar. So feel free to put those questions in the chat. If you put them in all caps, we're more likely to see it, so make sure you make us aware. Also feel free to use that chat to communicate with each other. But we thought we'd start with a little bit about who we are.
Hey, look, it's us.
That's us. I'll let you start since your picture is first.
Oh, sure. Well, I am Barbara. I am Act Like Barbara on Instagram and Twitter and other places. I am a coach. Aside from co-founding the CIRS Group with Jacie, I also do business coach and fitness coaching facilitation over at the Tom School of Life. And also I offer one-on-one coaching as well. Generally for people who are doing the transition from work to owning their own business and that sort of fun stuff, but also financial stuff, any kind of life stuff. That is me.
And I'm Jacie. I am the co-founder of the CIRS Group with Barbara. I'm Lady Carnivore on Instagram. I have been a carnivore for 3 years, and kind of midway through my carnivore journey, I became very sick with an autoimmune condition and kind of thought that was going to be the level of pain I would have to live the rest of my life. And so I was really excited to find out about CIRS. But when I started looking into CIRS, it was very much this thing of all of the information is provider facing and really overwhelming. And so we set out to make this group in order to provide information and resources for people at their level and really speak patient to patient. So kind of with that said, the disclaimer here is Barbara and I aren't medical professionals. We are experienced CIRS patients, as well as, having the combined experience of all of our group members and what they share with us. So a little bit about our community. We run the cirsgroup.com. You can join us over there. There we have people who share, it's kind of a forum type environment, so you can share your experience, ask questions. You have the support of the entire community and the combined brain power of the entire community over there. We'll also do some coaching, so if you're interested in that, definitely reach out to us. And then we also have resources available on the group, so if you're looking for more information or specific resources to do with CIRS testing or remediation or sourcing medicine, we have that available in the group as well. All right, so that's the end of our spiel. We'll get onto the Q&A section. So Barbara, I'm not in the chat. Was there anything you wanted to start with?
We have our first question from Tosca. How long did it take you on full dose CSM or cholestyramine to get to the last step VIP spray?
Great question. So both Barbara and I actually didn't take cholestyramine. Cholestyramine is the big CIRS binder. So when we're talking about CIRS, it's that genetic predisposition to being really bad at eliminating a biotoxin, and then you encounter that biotoxin. So you end up taking biotoxin binders. They're very specific. The two main ones are either cholestyramine or welchol. We happen to both take welchol. It's slightly less effective than cholestyramine. It has 25% of the receptor sites that actually grab onto the biotoxins. And it took me full dose. I would have been 6 months to get to VIP. How about yourself?
Let's see. I started in July. I think I started VIP in December, I want to say. So yeah, roughly around the same amount of time. For me. But, there are people who have to be on binders for closer to a year before they can move on. It depends on your environment. It depends on the length of your exposure, your original exposure. Because some people, remember, some people are growing up in moldy environments and it's like a family home they live in their entire childhood. Someone with that kind of background is going to maybe take longer to heal by the time they're ready to do CIRS treatment than someone who, like me, for example. I think most of my mold exposure came from 9 months that I was bartending in a particular building about 8 years ago. So it's just like, I think those things matter when you're trying to decide or figure out how long this stuff will take you.
I definitely think typical timeline we've seen is 12 to 18 months for people seems to be really normal. And even for myself, after 6 months on the binder, I'm expecting at least 6 months on VIP.
Right.
So next question, are there any other toxins that will activate CIRS other than Lyme and mold?
Yes, Brenda, there are.
So there's 6 main haplotypes to do with the biotoxins involved with CIRS. It can be things like vaccine. Long COVID is a newly identified biotoxin. There's also, there's the Pfiesteria, the fish bacteria, toxic algae, bacteria. A big thing in CIRS right now is actinomycetes, which are the bacteria that are attracted to mold. So there are a lot of different biotoxins, and there's weird ones too. We did an episode about this on our podcast about things like foreign bodies inside your body, like breast implant illness is technically a biotoxin because it's a toxin your body can't eliminate.
Yep. Yeah, I would say anything like that. I'm actually, TMI, I have a copper IUD that I will be removing very soon, just to, again, eliminate any possible extra things. Just knowing that I have CIRS, you have to be a little bit more careful about what you allow into your body, which is a weird thing to say, but I just said it. Next question. Why is it not recommended to take binders and spray at the same time?
I think that this question is very nuanced. So it's not that it's not recommended that you take the binders and spray at the same time. You totally can. And there's some people who it's indicated they should take low dose VIP before they take the binder so that they can tolerate the binder better. I would say that the Shoemaker protocol in general is laid out in a way that produces the best domino effect so that you get the biggest bang for your buck along each step. So by starting with the binders, it's kind of like that's your biggest lever to being able to move forward. Whereas if you started with something like gut healing, your body's not going to be able to actually do anything with that protocol because you haven't started with step 1, which is eliminating the biotoxins, which will then allow your body to heal. So I wouldn't say that it's not recommended to do them at the same time. It's really up to your Shoemaker protocol, and it's going to be a very bio-individual thing.
Yeah. And just as an example, I think Jacie and I both were on a maintenance level, so a lower level of the binder as we started VIP, or even I think we might have stayed at the full dose, started VIP, and then dropped down to a maintenance level, right? So I feel like there's, like Jacie said, a lot of nuance there. Next question. What weird symptoms have people mentioned in your group? Also, teeth or dental issues related to mold? Well, let's see. Do you want to take the weird symptoms part and I'll take the teeth part because I feel like it's appropriate?
I feel like the weird symptoms thing is that's infinite, right? CIRS presents differently for different people because it attacks your weakest part. For some people, it'll trigger things like autoimmune conditions. For other people, like yourself, it'll trigger GI conditions. So the actual symptoms related to CIRS feels infinite. There's 37 they use for the diagnostic procedure, but I would say really specific ones we hear about a lot are stubborn weight gain, hair loss, plantar fasciitis, joint pain is a huge one, especially in the knees, or morning back stiffness where you feel like, I feel like I can describe this really well, but it feels like if you move wrong, your back is going to snap. That is a very specific but common CIRS symptom. But
plantar fasciitis?
I did mention that one. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
Migraines. Totally sorry, I'm going to throw random things. Go ahead.
Yeah, SIBO, H. pylori. We could just list symptoms all day, so I don't think that's super productive.
That's a good point. And as for the dental part, man, so some ridiculous percentage of people with CIRS have staph or marcons in their nose. Sorry, I hope I didn't accidentally mute you, Jacie. So with the staph, that is all near your dental stuff, right? Now, my experience is that I have had to have some dental work, and that's why I wanted to go for this question. There is some connection between lots of dental work or even some dental work, like even getting your wisdom teeth removed, which happens to almost everybody these days. But that just having dental work increases your risk of developing MARCoNS. So there's like a chicken and egg thing there. And of course, if you're predisposed to not handling biotoxins well and you go into situations like that, I feel like it's just like a cycle that can feed itself and go the wrong way. So yes, there's a relation between teeth and dental issues and CIRS.
And just to quickly add to this, I think the two places that you're going to physically see like negative health impact are your skin. So if you have like rashes or outbreaks or stuff like that, and then your teeth. I don't know how many people know this, but your saliva is actually your blood minus the red blood cells. So it's literally whatever is floating around in your bloodstream is in your saliva. So if you have junk in your bloodstream, you're going to have junk in your mouth.
I love how you put that. That's
I
do though. Man, that's going to stick with people, I feel. All right.
Do you remain carnivore for your autoimmune condition or for other reasons? I think we both have a similar answer to this. Like carnivore is just a really great foundation to better health. It kind of takes out all of the extracurricular nonsense where it's like, this is my baseline of best health. I can choose to eat not carnivore, but I know that I'm then implementing things that are going to create more variables for my health baseline. And especially as I'm healing, it's like, I don't want to deal with all the nonsense. And we've talked about like the random things that carnivore helps us with, like not having dandruff or canker sores. And it's like when you're going through chronic illness, it's like you want as little nonsense in your life as possible. So I know for myself, it's both to give myself the best health possible and best chance for healing possible, but also to just like remove all the clutter.
Absolutely. I definitely feel my best when I am eating carnivore, regardless of anything. I do enjoy the equivalent of like a monthly cheat, whatever that is, like a dessert type of cheat. So I'm, I think even after I heal, I would like to maintain that kind of lifestyle, heavily meat-based carnivore. And then, the occasion, the knowledge that I can have like a cheat, on a holiday or on vacation or, just those occasional moments. That's my goal as far as, after full treatment and healing. There's one question here. Did you have CIRS symptoms since bartending, Barbara? Yes, the thing, and this is a good point to make. If you have CIRS, so you are the 1 in 4 people who are predisposed to not being able to eliminate biotoxins when you encounter that biotoxin. Just leaving that environment doesn't necessarily, it can make you a slightly better, possibly, but the symptoms will remain, the issues will remain until you actually go through treatment. So yes, I may have had GI issues even before then. There are other things that could have happened earlier in my life that maybe could have started the ball rolling on my toxin bucket getting full. But I think once I hit that bartending job in a very moldy environment, I think that's when things took a real turn for the worse. So yeah, I think, yes, I've had symptoms since then, to answer your question.
Next question, if we were looking to start with one lab to help determine if CIRS is at play, would MSH be appropriate? I think it's really hard to say one. So when you're looking at CIRS blood work, there's really 2 parts to it. The first part is the genetic haplotypes, which helps you identify which biotoxins you might be sensitive to. And the second half is the innate immune markers. So the problem with CIRS is that your innate immune system never hands off to your adaptive immune system, meaning you never produce the antibodies that actually help you eliminate the biotoxins. So instead of looking for like typical autoimmune blood markers like rheumatoid factor or CRP, stuff like that, you're actually looking for innate immune response. MSH is one of 6 blood markers that they specifically look for CIRS. So I think if you're looking at one lab isn't going to give you the full picture. You could have low MSH because you have pituitary gland issues. I think you need to look at the full picture. But if you have the 8 of the 13 symptom clusters and you fail the vision test, it's indicated that you should pursue the blood work. And there's really no downside to doing that because it's going to really help you understand yes or no, you have CIRS. It's not going to be this like, okay, I'm going to do MSH. And if that's low, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. It's almost like you are just delaying the inevitable at that point. So
yeah, I completely agree. And just to point out, for me, my blood markers, my TGF beta 1 and C4A were pretty normal. So if I had only tested those, I might go, oh, maybe I'm fine. But my MSH was like undetectable, super low. So in your situation, if I'd only tested MSH, like maybe I would have been like, oh, okay, I have CIRS. But maybe you will have the opposite situation. So yeah, it's a really good idea to get that well-rounded result.
Especially since one of the haplotypes is low MSH. So it's like that's a confounding factor. So MSH might be the least appropriate in that sense. It would be hard for me to say like this is the one you should do.
Yeah. And some people don't it'll be hard for them to raise their MSH their whole life for that like so that's exactly. I think that was the point you were just making.
Next step.
Yeah, go for it.
How do you know when it's appropriate to ask an employer to remediate versus having to seek new employment?
I mean, how much do you love your job? That's what I would ask. Like, do you love your job? Because there are so many jobs out there. And I think sometimes people, I work with a lot of people in this realm. So that's why where I'm pulling from. But a lot of people think that what they know is familiar and comfortable, and they're scared to go outside of that. So I would ask yourself, do you love your job? Is this something, do you love your employer? That's also important. But if they're both kind of meh, I mean, I would, it doesn't hurt to look. You don't have to take another job. I would definitely look into looking at other jobs, maybe even working remotely if you know your home is safe. That might be, both Jacie and I work remotely. Kind of because that's a lifestyle preference, but also like that really eliminates another factor of like 8 hours a day being somewhere where we don't have as much control.
I would say for me, there's no downside in asking. Like either they're going to say no and you have to get a new job, or you have to get a new job. So you might as well ask and then see where it goes from there. I think that's what I would do is just, and also they don't know what they don't know. So they might not know that they have a bad environment. They might not know about mold illness. So just making them aware and bringing that to the table and seeing how they respond to that. Like as an employee, I think that would be very valuable to know how my employer feels about making my environment safe for me. So I would just ask.
Go with Jacie's first, and then do the existential stuff that I talked about.
Then question your whole existence, your purpose in life, your passions, what you want to do.
I go there way too soon sometimes. What is VIP?
VIP is vasoactive intestinal peptide. It is a natural hormone made by the human body, but when you have CIRS, because of the low MSH, typically this is very low in CIRS patients. So it's supplemented at the end, and it's the really cool one. I'm going to nerd out for just a second. It's the really cool step of the protocol that helps correct any incorrect genomic expression that was caused by CIRS. So because of the chronic inflammation, it actually changes how your genes express themselves in your body. Fascinating. I know you guys are at the edges of your seats, but the VIP is the part that turns off the errant genes that turned on because of the chronic inflammation. So it's like, to me, it's the coolest step of CIRS.
And Jacie felt amazing getting onto VIP. I will out you on that. Like it really, for me, the binders were the most impactful, like clearing out toxins. I felt like so much better so quickly. And that happened to Jacie as well, but she got to another level with the VIP spray, which, and for some people that happens. And that is why.
We had
go ahead.
Questions in a row about tension in ligaments or their swelling while on binders. And then the second question is, do people experience tendon and ligament problems with CIRS? Yes.
I will let you take this. Yeah.
It's called enthesis or enthesitis. My CIRS provider recently told me that there's something really specific about the synovial fluid in knees that Lyme likes to attack. So if you do have like chronic knee pain and it's not resolving with CIRS treatment, it could be because you have an underlying Lyme issue. But also the TGF beta 1 is a tissue remodeler. And so that's one of the elevated blood markers typically found in CIRS patients. And the people with elevated TGF beta 1 typically have the joint problems, the ligament problems, the tendon problems. For me, I couldn't walk for a period of time without a cane, and I almost had to go to using a wheelchair because it was just so painful for me to actually move my joints because of the enthesis enthesitis. And so CIRS has completely resolved that for me. I haven't done any other sort of like PT or treatment for that outside of CIRS treatment, and it's completely resolved. I can run now, which I never thought was going to be a possibility for me this time last year.
Yeah, amazing. Let's see. Do you think you can heal with binders if living in some mold? Hurts me score 14. Florida is so hard to find a mold-free place to live.
Yeah, Florida is godforsaken. Like the entire state just needs to be scrapped, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm talking trash because I came from there. But yeah, I was living in a home in Florida with a 10 hurts me score. I started binders there and I started to get improvement on the binders in the 10 score place. But it wasn't until I left that I had exponential healing. So I think what some people will experience is like some initial improvement and then they'll kind of stall. So I would say like if you can get started on the binders and you feel improvement to the point where you're like capable of moving, that would be the ideal situation.
Yeah. Some practitioners may not treat someone if they currently live in a place with a hurts me score of 14. So that's, you can find a practitioner that will work with you. Some practitioners are a little bit more, hey, real life is happening. Like maybe you can't move for a few months because you're locked into a lease. You can decide whether or not, you want to just postpone treatment and wait till that situation can be fixed. Some people do start the binders and they don't feel super great because you are still in exposure. At the same time, it could still help you along like Jacie experienced. So yeah, it's tough. It is tough. I feel like there's probably some decent places still in the South. Maybe not.
I
All
think
right.
So one interesting thing is, according to the EPA, 50% of buildings are water damaged, but that water damage doesn't have to be a leak. It can be your humidity is over 50%. So if your home is regularly over 50% humidity, you don't even need to have a leak. So I just feel like the potential for mold is greater in that kind of environment. It's not necessarily like you can't live there. I think it's going to be harder to live there and you're going to have to be more careful. But if you have if you socially have more benefit from living there and it makes that extra effort for your physical health worth it, like if you have family there or you live on the beach and that's been your life dream, like I see that as still being worthwhile for you specifically, but it's going to be very individual about how much effort you're willing to put into your living environment.
All right. I live in the Southeast and I'm surrounded by mold because of humidity. Is there a state that you would recommend would be best to live in for the least amount of mold? Well, okay. So the one caveat to going to a drier climate is that the mold species that do exist in the drier climates have less competition. So sometimes this can mean a worse situation, depending on the water damage and all the other fun stuff going on. That said, I grew up and lived in California my entire life. And before I knew about CIRS, I moved to Las Vegas and I immediately felt better. So there is something to how dry it is here in Nevada, I think is a good thing. Jacie now lives in Colorado, also a dry climate. What are your thoughts on that, Jacie?
Yeah, I would say probably drier is better. Even though you don't have the competition for the like healthy mold species, I think the goal should still be like no mold species in your home. So
Right.
even here in Colorado over the summer, I tested my home and it was a 3 hertz me. We had AC issues where it was like leaking into the ceiling and it was just like stagnant water in the ceiling. Yeah, that cringe face. Still a hertz me 3. And then just recently we had the hot water heater burst and flooded and still it hurts me 3. And I just keep retesting because I'm like, oh man, what is happening? But I think it's less effort. Like you can be here and in a drier environment and it's just less effort to remain in a safe environment. Next question.
Lost you?
Oh, I'm sorry. It
Oh, okay.
froze for me a second there. What was that?
Yeah, you're back. I called out that it was frozen for a second, but we're good. Looks like we're back. So next question is maintenance level. Should we expect to be on binders indefinitely? I have heard of a practitioner telling a patient, yes, binders indefinitely. I don't like that. I don't accept that personally. I feel like that doesn't make any sense. I don't know, Jacie, maybe I'm talking too much, but what do you think?
So it's not binders indefinitely. I think that there's a certain aspect of like, there's going to be a certain amount of binders you can take where it eliminates the biotoxins to a point that you feel better. But then beyond that, like if you continue to take the binders, it's like, well, maybe there's still biotoxins left and you can further empty your toxin bucket. I don't see benefit to being on the binders long term, especially from the concept of your body builds resilience. So over time, it's like the biotoxins in your body might become resilient to the binders. So I don't think it should be like a long term thing. I think 6 to 12 months on the binders is fairly normal. And then if you're re-exposed, you'll have to go back onto the binders for a couple of weeks just to make sure you get the biotoxins out and then you're good to go. So no, you're not on binders indefinitely, but there is some maintenance involved if you do have an exposure event.
Perfect. If haplotype is 1,5-Na, it indicates low MSH. Does it mean that your MSH will always be low regardless of the therapy that you do?
No, not necessarily. So there's not a ton of research on low MSH. My CIRS provider is actually one of the only CIRS providers who has specifically done testing on this haplotype. It does mean that you're more likely to experience pain conditions, but it also means that to get your MSH raised, it takes more effort, but it's not, it won't always be low. It's just you have more maintenance, you have more therapies you need to do in order to keep it high. It's more prone to being low. I think that's how I would put it.
Question, do you have MTHFR? I have compound MTFR.
Yes. So the MTHFR is common in CIRS people. I have it. It seems like there's a correlation there. But I was saying this in the CIRS group the other day, and I think I'm the only one who finds this as interesting as I do. But like a lot of the haplotypes associated with CIRS have protective qualities in other aspects of our life. So for example, a lot of the haplotypes for autoimmune conditions were actually found in people who survived the Black Plague. So it's like being capable of suppressing that viral load apparently means you're more susceptible to autoimmune conditions. So it's like the haplotypes are good and bad, just like any other gene.
And can you explain MTHFR or MTFR for anybody who's like, what?
Yeah, it's a gene that has been identified as super prone to autoimmune conditions.
Got it. Is welchol less constipating than cholestyramine? I'm assuming is the rest of the question. Neither of us took cholestyramine, so I personally can't compare. I know that welchol as a binder in the binding effect that it has is only 1/4 as effective as cholestyramine. It's possible that the side effects would then be also less. That's probably a common experience, but I think everybody's so bio individual. It's hard to say.
Yeah, welchol is definitely known to be less, or it's easier to tolerate than cholestyramine, which is why a lot of people will take the hit on the being less effective for having less impact on their like general well-being. It's less exhausting, it's less constipating, you're less likely to have reactions to it. It's also a more convenient format because it's a pill versus a powder.
Yeah, there's definitely more adherence. There's a better word for that with patients because it's like it's just easier to take. What do you recommend for constipation on carnivore when increased fat doesn't help? Our favorite thing is magnesium citrate or citrate, however you pronounce it, right?
Yeah, but recently, Christian and I had a conversation where magnesium chloride is a really bioavailable form of magnesium and it doesn't have the citric acid in it. And the reason you might want to avoid citric acid, especially if you're having histamine reactions or mast cell activation syndrome, also known as MCAS, is because citric acid is in its production is made out of black mold. So a lot of people who are mold sensitive probably don't want to be taking mag citrate. So if you are sensitive to that, try magnesium chloride instead.
And that will still have like the make you go
Yep, it's
fun aspects of magnesium citrate. Okay, cool. Yeah,
yep.
no, I don't think I had any issues taking magnesium citrate, and just like one every other day ended up being a perfect amount for me personally.
I take 2 a
To
day, so
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
very bioelectrical.
Thank you. Yes, there is a range. Some people had to take more than just two a day to combat the effects of the constipation. So definitely play with that, and like start at one a day. I think is like a good whatever that dose is that you get. Start there and adjust as needed. You may have a couple uncomfortable days, but maybe do it over the weekend when you're home. Uh, and then why would welchol make me feel like I'm losing my mind? Tried taking it 3 years ago.
I think this just highlights how important it is to work with a CIRS practitioner. A lot of people, especially if you have high MMP9, which is another one of those blood markers that indicates CIRS, don't tolerate the binders well. But also if you are still in the midst of exposure, basically CIRS shuts down your immune system. It doesn't work correctly. So anything you do to detox, including taking the biotoxin binders, is putting pressure on a system that isn't working correctly. It's like trying to ride a bicycle with a dented wheel. And so if you're working with a practitioner, they can kind of help you pace that, engage that, and they'll have, different tricks up their sleeve to help you through that. For example, they could prescribe low dose VIP to get your MSH high enough that you can tolerate the binders. And it's kind of like this stair-step approach to treatment. But that would be my assumption, is either you were still in exposure or you had really high MMP9.
Yep. Was sleeping an issue while on the binders? No, actually the opposite. One of the biggest side effects that we see amongst members, and certainly Jacie and I both experienced, was almost narcoleptic levels of fatigue in the first couple weeks. I had to just I just laid down and went to sleep in the middle of the day in the first couple weeks of being on the binders. Like that, just I was just that tired. So for us, for a lot of people, it seems to actually help with sleep. And then that does seem to go away. Like your body gets used to it. And of course, when you work with a practitioner, they're going to start you slow and slowly build you up in a way to minimize those side effects. But that was my experience with the binders and sleep.
Yeah, same. I was narcoleptic. But the other thing to consider is, when you're going through CIRS treatment, is like you are correcting so much downstream impact in your body. And one of those issues a lot of people experience is sleep issues when they have CIRS. And so as your body starts to correct and level out, it's not only adapting to being on the binders and adapting to the detox processes, but it's also adapting to the new hormone levels you're providing for yourself. So there's 3 levers there, just like in a vacuum, let alone like nutrition, stress levels, limbic retraining, like all of that impacts it. So it's hard to say this one thing when you're talking about CIRS, because it's just multi-system, multi-symptom. There's a lot involved.
For sure. Barbara, how much have your GI issues improved? Sorry if TMI. Never TMI. I'm always about poop. Also, why does CIRS mold exposure cause sleep issues? Okay, so I'll do the GI issue part, obviously, because it's about me. So my GI issues presented as basically low-grade diarrhea, just as my normal for years. So that was fun. Definitely pain, like stomach pain or like bowel pain or whatever. Also, like depending on what I ate. So that's where I was before carnivore and before CIRS treatment. Carnivore, if anything, made the diarrhea part worse. And then it kind of got a little bit better, but never truly improved. And that's why I dug into CIRS and got treatment and all of that. Now that I am where I'm at in CIRS treatment, which is towards the end, things have improved quite a bit as long as I stay carnivore. If I'm not carnivore, if I just eat like the equivalent of a donut, I'm mostly okay. But if I like start to add a couple things, every day, then my GI just goes off the rails. So I'm in the point now where I am looking at supportive therapies for my gut healing process, because sometimes you need to clear out CIRS before you can then attack the downstream effect, which is, leaky gut, probably in my situation. And that can be done in a number of ways. I'm going to be looking at, but I haven't chosen what path to do first, really. I'm going to be looking at like SIBO treatment, like an herbal antibiotic, basically what what a holistic doctor would normally do for SIBO. I'm going to try that possibly. I'm also doing DNRS, which is limbic retraining, because I think that a lot of my past trauma and stress I hold in my gut. I think that's why that was such a prominent symptom for me. So I'm going to be doing more of like brain rewiring stuff as well, and just lowering stress, continuing to eat better, continuing to support my gut in whatever way that I can. Sorry, that was kind of long-winded, but I thought all of that information was important.
No, absolutely.
And why does CIRS exposure cause sleep issues? I mean, for a lot of people, it's like the frequent urination will wake them up. And if you're waking up to pee in the middle of the night, that's a good indication of CIRS. But Jacie, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah,
Any more than
so
that?
the inflammation creates cytokines, which are inflammatory proteins, and they will actually attach to the leptin receptors in your brain, which then impacts your ability to produce MSH. MSH is melanocyte stimulating hormone. It plays a lot of random effects in the body, including maintaining the tight junctions of the gut. So it can cause, if it's low, it can cause leaky gut symptoms. But another thing it's very productive in is helping you create melatonin. So a lot of people who have CIRS will experience non-restful sleep because they don't have the hormones necessary to help them get REM.
Beautiful. This is why we keep Jacie around, guys. She just knows this stuff off the top of her friggin' head. All right, I tested for mold toxicity and on a protocol. Levels are dropping. Should I continue to test for CIRS? I'm guessing if you're testing for mold toxicity, is this maybe the urine test? And the urine test is specifically testing what your body is eliminating. So if it's dropping, silence.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at me being dumb right now. Jacie, I don't know. We might need more information for this, but I'm curious about what protocol you're on as well, Susie. If you want to leave that, I know we've got a lot of messages to get through, but if you want to say what you are, the only one that is clinically proven and peer reviewed as a protocol to treat CIRS, to treat mold illness, all of this is the Shoemaker protocol. So unless that's the protocol, I am not sure about what protocol you are on.
Yeah, I think with mold toxicity, mold plays two different negative impacts on the body. One is the direct impact of a biotoxin, meaning everyone who is exposed to like black mold is going to feel that black mold. Whether you have CIRS or not, mold is bad. It has direct impact on your nerves and nerve functions. The urine tests typically test what you are eliminating. And so to Barbara's point, if your levels are dropping, it means that you're no longer eliminating that mold, which either means A, you're out of exposure, you're not being exposed to that mold, and your body has no more to eliminate, or B, your body is no longer eliminating that mold. So I personally would still do the symptom cluster and VCS test to see if blood work is indicated to move forward with a CIRS diagnosis.
Beautiful. Tori asks, I am just starting my CIRS protocol, but is there any way to increase concentration in the meantime?
Yeah, there's definitely some levers you can pull. I always say, like, when you're first starting in your CIRS protocol, most people, there's a certain amount of waiting before you can actually get started on the binder. You have to like get the blood work, wait for the diagnosis, schedule with a provider. Typically, they have wait times to get in. But there are things you can do right now to start feeling better. One is to find your unique combination of biohacks, for lack of a better term, that make you feel your best. This will not only make you feel better now, but it'll also help you tolerate the treatment better. So most people find that sun exposure, if you don't have histamine reactions to it, is very helpful because it's one of the only things that raises your MSH. Also making sure that you are eating, keto macros, carnivore diet, eliminating all of that excess clutter in your life. If you can have like a very gentle but scalable exercise approach that will actually help with one of your blood markers called VEGF, and it will actually help you feel more energy, even though it's like you lose energy doing it, but you have to do it very scaled. You don't want to have like a push and crash. So personally, like I do 5 minutes of exercise a day. That's it. But yeah, those are some things you can do like right now to feel better. Another big one is limbic retraining, and I think you can speak a little bit better to that.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of ways of doing limbic retraining. It's basically rewiring your brain to not overreact to triggers, and also to know that you're safe now, basically, for lack of better ways of putting it. I know that prior traumas, a long experience with chronic illness is a traumatic thing for anyone to go through. And so your body is like, tries to make shortcuts in itself to deal with that kind of thing. And so if your body's constantly ready for everything to suck, basically, it's just, you're going to be in constant fight or flight mode all the time. And that in and of itself is very taxing on the system, and can prevent you from getting better. So for anybody who has that kind of trauma in their life, or again, has even just experienced CIRS for a long time without realizing what it was, like, that is trauma. So limbic retraining, you can sign up for a program, an online program like DNRS or the Gupta program. Those are options, but you can also, journal, meditate, do yoga if that feels good to you. All the biohacking that Jacie just talked about, the sauna, if you're okay with that. Some people have a bad reaction in the sauna, so test that out for yourself. But there's just improving your life in any way that you possibly can. If you have a really terrible employer, like I said earlier, and like, take steps to leave that environment, whatever that takes, make that a priority, lower the stress in your life. I know that's easier said than done, but the little things that you can do really do add up. So I think that's what I would say to that. And I do want to just say this comment out loud. Sabrina says her employer shut down their whole office and moved us to a new location for everyone's safety. If your employer isn't responsive, time to find a new one. Amen. Amen to that. Next question. So would VIP reverse autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's?
Theoretically, yes. I'm excited to see this for myself because I did the genetic testing for my autoimmune condition. I have something called HLA-B27. So they've actually shown through Genie testing, and Genie testing is the specific genetic marker testing. It's an additional thing of blood work you can get on your CIRS journey, but it shows what genes have been turned on by CIRS, and then after VIP, they've actually shown that some of those genes turn off. So it would be really interesting for me to see what it does with my autoimmune genetic marker specifically. So Sarah, I'll keep you tuned on that one.
Yep. James says we are awesome. You are awesome, James. Thank you for that. Tori asks, I started binders and was feeling great, but then all of a sudden I felt worse than before I started the binder. Is this normal? We've certainly seen it happen. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I mean, just to really quickly say, it's the bicycle with the dented wheel. You're putting pressure on a system that isn't working well, and that's why it's so important to work with a provider who knows what they're talking about, because they're going to have those tips and tricks to keep you feeling your best, or possibly, change the order of the steps so that you're doing the VIP spray before, so that you can raise your MSH so you feel better on the binders.
Yep. Do resveratrol and curcumin decrease TGF-beta1 and C4a?
Yes. So our provider actually told us this, and I thought it was a really great approach to CIRS, is like anything you can do to treat inflammation is treating CIRS, right? Because it's chronic inflammatory response syndrome. It's treating the inflammation isn't necessarily going to eliminate what's causing the inflammation, but it does help correct all of those blood markers. So both of those supplements are known to reduce inflammation. I think more specifically TGF-beta1 and curcumin, I know there's studies on that. If you can tolerate curcumin, it's super powerful for TGF-beta1 specifically. C4a is a bit different. It's a complement factor, and it's typically increased in the presence of an exposure. So I think that resveratrol and curcumin are probably less effective on C4a than TGF-beta1. But again, anything you can do to lower your inflammation levels generally is a good thing.
Okay, this one is very UK specific, or well, I should say, it's Europe specific, I should say. So in Germany, I can't test the CIRS markers. Sending everything to the US or the UK is super expensive and often doesn't work because logistics take too long. After how many months of binders would you test? Full carnivore since 1.5 years, binders full dose since 2 months. So 2 months of being on the full binders. How often I mean, you can go by symptoms at that point. I know our practitioner actually relies more on symptoms than he did on testing. And again, that's where a practitioner, if you can find someone to work with who knows what to look for in that situation, they can be a little bit, they could just time the testing a little bit better because the symptoms might make things a little bit more obvious as to when to test. Jacie, would you add to that? Anything?
Yeah, the VCS test, the visual contrast sensitivity test, is a really great way to pace your treatment as well. So when you are loaded with biotoxins, typically you're less able to pass it. Even if you pass it, your scores will still improve as you get better. So it's actually a really great diagnostic criteria, but also it's really great to see how, track your progress through the protocol itself. So if I were in your situation, I would probably leverage that VCS test to see how I'm doing. If I failed it before, once I start passing it would be like when I would look into doing more blood work.
Yes, I can't believe I forgot the VCS test, of course. Brilliant. And then the question continues now into Lyme. We're pretty sure that I have the Lyme HLA. Does that increase the probability of having the mold HLA? And then also the question is, can you explain the process if you have Lyme? Yeah.
Yeah, so the Lyme and mold HLAs aren't necessarily related. I think that if you have one of the haplotypes for CIRS, you're very likely to have two of the haplotypes for CIRS, but those two aren't directly related. It's more of a genetic. You get, half your genes from your mom and half your genes from your dad. So if both your mom and your dad come from like genetic pools that are likely to have the CIRS haplotypes, then you're very likely to have 3 or 4. For Lyme, you're going to want to work with a Lyme literate practitioner. Lyme is the biotoxin. So when we talk about the steps of the Shoemaker protocol, the first step is removing exposure for people who are in mold. That's getting out of the moldy environment. For people with Lyme, that's controlling the Lyme to a point that you can move forward with the CIRS protocol.
All right. We will want to wrap up relatively soon, but I do see there are a lot of messages still coming through. So maybe we'll go a little quicker so we can get through some more of these. Does carpet hold on to mold? Yeah, it's worse than like a hardwood situation, I would say, or a laminate or a tile. Tile would probably be the least toxic maybe of the possible floorings you could choose. That doesn't necessarily mean go rip out all your carpet immediately. I think getting like an IEP, an indoor environmental professional is what that means, to kind of assess your specific situation would be the best thing to do for carpet.
Yeah, and that's something that providers will recommend too. Instead of doing like a whole home remediation, you could always start with soft surfaces to see if eliminating that improves your environment enough that you can get well. So carpet is normally the first lever that they recommend when you're looking into that.
Yep. Sarah asks, I'm thinking about this as a practitioner and how I support clients. What's the arc/timeline of healing, and what does cure look like with CIRS? Great question. So as far as the timeline of healing, we've seen like 12 to 18 months can be like from start to finish. And again, that means no re-exposures, that means no setbacks, which can happen. We've seen some of our members, they go on vacation and they stay in an Airbnb for like a full month. This isn't just like it's not necessarily that you just walk into a moldy building for like 10 minutes, leave, and like you get full, if you're reacting that badly, then your toxin bucket was already pretty full to begin with. So depending on how healed you are also kind of affects, like at the timing of the exposure with how healed you are, I should say, affects the length of time. But basically, once you are through the protocol and healed, you can go through life feeling relatively safe, just be on alert for the possible mold exposures or whatever your biotoxin is, exposures to that biotoxin. And it's a good idea to have, some of the binders on hand and some of the supportive things where you don't have to go through the entire lengthy protocol again when you get re-exposed, because now you're just treating that one little moment rather than the entire lifetime potentially that you've been exposed previously. So that first initial treatment when you discover CIRS for the first time is probably going to be the hardest. And then after that, it's more about maintenance and just being vigilant and, maintaining all of the best practices that you possibly can while still living your life.
Yeah, and then you have all the tools from when you first went through treatment to just knock it out pretty quickly. So I would say there's no cure for your genes, right? You were born with them, but you can manage it really easily. And I would say that we have led very normal lives even through treatment. We've traveled normally, etc.
Yep.
Someone asked, I'm very new to the concept of CIRS as possibly being a root cause of my autoimmune arthritis. Yes, I would agree with that. Where would be a good first place to learn about the basics, like CIRS for Dummies starting point? Someone mentioned Judy Cho has a lot of great resources. She does. We also have a podcast. If you go to the CIRS group on YouTube, I created a series of videos on Lady Carnivory. And then if you join the CIRSgroup.com, we do have a primer as well as other resources, shared experiences. So those would be the places I would start.
Yep. What is the best way to find a CIRS practitioner near where you live? I live in Virginia now. After moving out of South Carolina, I found someone on survivingmold.com and have my first appointment May 1st. You did what we would have told you. Just go to survivingmold.com. That is the only certified list of shoemaker trained practitioners that you want to pull from. Not everyone requires an in-person visit. So being near you is not necessarily the important thing. Jacie and I have never met our practitioner, for example. So some of them do require, like, let's say the first visit is in person and maybe that travel distance matters to you, like it probably does. So you can pick people based on that, but also I would keep calling around to find one that is willing to just see you via telehealth if there is no one near you.
Someone asked, how much is welchol and CSM per month with no insurance? I think my welchol without insurance is $150 per month. That would be the out of pocket. And I think CSM compounded is similar. And you would want to get the compounded version so that you get the pure powder, because the capsules have a lot of crap in them. It's like rice flour and nonsense that you're paying for no reason.
Right. I think my insurance didn't really cover it. So I went with like the GoodRx coupon and it was about that price. Does CIRS treatment also take care of co-infections?
It depends on the co-infection. So for example, if you have Lyme, you're going to want to do a Lyme treatment as part of your CIRS treatment. Marcons is one co-infection that's specifically addressed in the CIRS protocol. And there's 12 steps to the Shoemaker protocol. You have to do at least 3 of them: remove exposure, take the binders, do the VIP spray, but the rest are indicated by your blood work and your symptoms. So depending on that is when those different like downstream effects would be taken care of. And as part of that, your CIRS practitioner may refer you out to like a GI specialist or a rheumatologist if you're continuing to have these co-infections.
Yep. Let's see. I was told to use magnesium oxide. This is in reference to our earlier magnesium conversation. I mean, if you're told to take something, take it. Try it at least if your practitioner is guiding you on that, for sure.
I'm going to skip down to the next question. What type of carnivore do you recommend? Higher protein or higher fat? What percentage fat to protein?
This question.
I think it's so bio-individual. I also think that, saying higher protein or higher fat, like those are words that mean nothing. When you're talking about actual ratios, that can be helpful. I think a lot of people find 80-20 keto macros healing. At the same time, a lot of people with CIRS have a lot of metabolic impact from that. So I would say eat as best as you can. Like whatever that looks like for you, whatever makes you feel your best through treatment is going to be the best diet for you. So when we're talking about the ideal or perfect carnivore diet, it's going to be the one that's easy, sustainable, accessible for you and makes you feel good. And anyone who tells you differently, like if you're vibing on your carnivore diet and someone's like, oh, you're doing it wrong, you need to eat a stick of butter a day, they're objectively wrong.
Yes. Yeah. And I have found, I don't really track my macros. I definitely eat what I want to eat and what makes me feel my best. And I kind of let that, I throw butter on everything. That's my adding fat, but I'm looking for the next question.
Considering that the sun is raising MSH, can we assume that there is a direct correlation between low vitamin D and MSH? Yes, I think there's definitely a correlation. I think correlation is the right word. I don't think you can say causation. Vitamin D is a supplement I've been taking throughout my CIRS protocol, specifically because I was having histamine reactions to the sun. And I do think it was helpful. So if you are someone who does get histamine reactions, and that can look like a sun rash, which we normalize, it's not normal. You shouldn't be having a histamine reaction to sunlight. Vitamin D might be your entry point to raising your MSH until you can build the tolerance to be out in the sunlight.
Right. Can carnivore make you worse? Ever since going carnivore, I felt amazing for 2 weeks, then I've gotten worse. Is it because carnivore is exposing the true state of my body, or could it be just be CIRS? I have every symptom of all the clusters. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, for me, carnivoring harder was not a good idea. When I went lion diet, I developed histamine reactions to beef. There's also a lot about the metabolic impact of CIRS. It prevents your body from mobilizing fat stores, but it also makes it harder to run gluconeogenesis. So gluconeogenesis is the process of converting protein into usable glucose in the body. So for people who aren't eating glucose, carnivores, that process is a lot harder. So one thing you can try leveraging is eat like 20 grams of carbs a day and see if that makes you feel better. I was doing that for a while when I was like mid CIRS, is like I just felt like crap all the time, but including like 20 grams of carbs in my day just evened out my baseline. And it was something I had to figure out because if I ate too many carbs, it would start increasing my depression symptoms. So that's going to be a very bio-individual thing too.
Yep. If there's a correlation between vitamin D and MSH, is there any research done how different it is to get it by sun exposure versus the pill? I mean, sun is always going to be better. The real thing, just like getting your any vitamin through actual food is always going to be better than taking a pill or a drop of whatever. That said, depending on where you live, you can try tanning beds. That's another way. I do that. I know it doesn't look it, but I do. And then, but you can also, if you can't go outside, there's tanning beds, but then also if the pill is the best that you can do, then do that. That's what I would say to that.
I've been on ultra low carb for years, including carnivore 4 months and literally the same number on the scale. Will I ever drop weight perhaps? So there's a lot to this. One is with CIRS, it's hard to mobilize fat stores, gluconeogenesis, but also the cytokines, which are the inflammatory proteins that latch onto the leptin receptors in your brain. Leptin receptors are what tell your body you are full. And so when you have that impacting you. I know with my own CIRS journey, like it's been a wild ride in terms of my weight. I started underweight because I had prepped for a bikini competition, gained, 30 pounds over the year. I had a lot of like binge eating behaviors. It wasn't from like a disordered eating place. It was just like I was ravenous all of the time. So this is totally normal. I just want to normalize this for you. You're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. This is CIRS. And just going through CIRS treatment, I lost weight like without trying. I weighed myself like a month after, it was 2 months after starting the binder, and I dropped 10 pounds without even trying. And I was like, oh man, I need to keep an eye on this because I don't want to be underweight again. But I really like just want to give you that hope of it's not you, you're not the problem. This is CIRS.
Yeah, we did do a whole podcast episode on this topic. And again, we did a lot of podcast episodes on a lot of these topics where we can actually take 10, 15 minutes to deep dive on it. But the important thing is to heal. And then, your body's not going to prioritize things like losing weight when it's got like a lot of shit going on, basically. So that would be, another thing to keep in mind. What is the deal with muscle spasms and tremors as one of the symptoms of CIRS?
Yeah, two things. One is that biotoxins have a direct nerve impact on you. So the mold or the biotoxin physically in your body is directing your nerve function. But also, a lot of people with CIRS have ADH, which is it's the hormone that regulates your kidney function, and osmolality, which is the hydration level of your veins. So essentially, like, what is the ratio of liquid to electrolytes in your body? And so most people with CIRS have electrolyte imbalances that they need to correct through CIRS treatment. And with electrolyte imbalances, you can get muscle spasms and tremors.
What other histamine reactions can be from sun exposure besides a rash? I've gotten like bumps, which is like weird because they go away. They're just like hives, I guess. I don't know if that's what that would be. Like a headache, like all of like any other like sun stroke or sun, what's the just overexposure, like heat exposure, any of those kinds of symptoms as well.
Yeah, and any of the typical histamine reactions. So like a headache is very normal for if you're having a histamine response. GI problems is another like really common histamine response. Any sort of like appearance on your skin of whether it's a rash or like weird breakouts, I would get that. All of those are like typical histamine responses. So you can actually get those from sun exposure.
Yeah. We're at the end of the questions. Some really great timing, guys. Good job. So this one's a specific. My skin is super sensitive and I get blood bruises under the surface of my skin and it's become very thin. My skin tears easily and bleeds easily. I also have RA and have been on prednisone for more than 10 years at 10 to 25 milligrams a day. Have you heard of this with CIRS?
Yeah, I mean that there's a lot of compounding stuff there that could definitely be part of the prednisone. But also with CIRS, you typically another common CIRS symptoms is blood clotting issues. And so you can bruise easily, you can bleed easily. I know that when I was at my worst and still in exposure, like if I got a cut, it would just like I would bleed like water. Like it was just so runny. And that's a very normal thing for CIRS people. I don't want to say normal, common.
It can happen. Yes. I think a good takeaway is I don't know that CIRS treatment is some kind of magic bullet. Like ever since people said that about carnivore, I'm skeptical of any like, oh man, this will cure everything. But man, CIRS causes a lot of friggin' problems. So when I think you'll notice as you go through the healing journey, these things drop off. And maybe some symptoms will go away and then new symptoms will show up that were always there. You just didn't even notice because the other ones were so bad. So people, your healing journey is not going to be like this nice swoop of improvement. It's going to be, it's going to have its like ebbs and flows as you go through things. So definitely, I would say CIRS is going to be just such a huge root cause for so many people that get through that healing process first and like see where you're at on the other side of it. And then you can start attacking some of the other side stuff if needed at that point.
And one last question, because I think this
Yeah.
one is so important. But
Yes.
Terrence asked after treatment or during, have you mentally felt back to normal, like where you were before CIRS? So before I was treated for CIRS, if you asked me what my worst symptom was, I would have told you pain, because I was just in pain morning, noon, night, all the time. And after going through CIRS treatment, I think the biggest benefit I have felt is not being pain-free, which is amazing. I'm not complaining about that at all, but is I feel like myself again. Like when I had CIRS, I just lost myself. I was depressed. I was moody. I felt like my brain wasn't my own. I almost felt like I was a third-party observer to my own life. And since going through treatment, like I feel like myself again. I feel joy again. So yes, Terrence, 100%.
Yeah, it's amazing the impact of chronic illness. I mean, you really don't even realize how bad it is until you feel better, which is saying something because people who are in the thick of it feel awful and they are aware of a lot of how bad it is. But when you can compare it to the other side, man, like it sucks. And I'm glad that I'm glad that CIRS treatment exists because it's just, I mean, yeah, this is just the missing piece for so many people that to get them on the other side. So yeah.
I think that was the perfect ending. Terrence, thank you so much for that softball
Yeah.
of an ending question. Thank you all so much for joining us on this webinar. If you are looking for more resources and support, you can always join us over at the cirsgroup.com. We did record this, so we will be posting it. And if you guys need anything, have any questions, just reach out, let us know, and we'd be happy to answer those for you.
Absolutely. And we'll email the link once it's up on our YouTube channel, which is where our podcast lives as well. We will send that link out to everybody who registered for this webinar. So if you registered to get this link, then you will get this link for the replay as well. So looking forward to that. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, happy Passover and Easter and everything else that's going on. And have a great rest of your weekend.